Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Karina, an English teacher for over 8 years traveling and living abroad. Right now I'm in France and I'm sharing with you my teaching tips and some of my travel experiences. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a really popular interview question that can sometimes stump some of you, and it has stumped me in the past as well. So let's get into the video and check out that question. The question we're going to be looking at is, can you tell me about your teaching style, or how would you describe your pedagogic approach? So this question is really popular for obvious reasons. It really gives you an idea of the teacher and what you can expect when you hire them, and how they would handle the classroom, how they would manage the classroom. So let's get into the best answer to give right now in 2024. So the best answer for a question like this is that you have a student-centered approach. Anything a bit different is not in alignment with the 2024 expectations for teaching in general, and also teaching English in an online setting and in person. Teaching a foreign language, let me be more general, teaching a foreign language to adult students and to kids as well. So this student-centered approach, or a student-centered approach, means that you take into consideration the needs, the interests, the values, the goals of the student in preparing your lessons. So you do not come to your classroom or to your lesson with a pre-prepared lesson without ever asking anything to the student, without asking them, hey, what do you want to learn? Or why are you here today? Or what's something that's really giving you a lot of problems lately? Or what's difficult for you when learning a language? Without asking these questions, it's pointless trying to start a lesson with just anything that you decide. So initially, these questions that you would ask your student, this happens in the first lesson. This is when you conduct your needs analysis. So your list of questions to find out exactly what the student wants, that's what it's called, a needs analysis. So let's keep in mind that as you go on throughout the classes, you're at lesson number 5, let's say, it would be a good idea to revisit this needs analysis. Every 5 lessons, I like to revisit the needs analysis and check in with the student to see if these needs have in fact remained the same, or if there's something we need to change, we need to adapt. It depends on the student. Sometimes I can do this every lesson just to check in that they're getting exactly what they want. It's a simple question at the end of the lesson. Hey, how was that for you? Is there anything special you'd like us to do for the next lesson? Is there a topic you want us to talk about for the next lesson? Right? These are really reassuring questions as well, and lets the student know that they are in charge in their learning. Yeah, they are making decisions on what they learn and what they need, really. Let's talk about some of the benefits of having a student-centered approach. So the first benefit is that this really keeps your student engagement high because everything that you do in each lesson comes from them. So they are engaged, they are interested. You're not doing anything that they don't want to do, or that's not part of their plan or their goals. So you are really ensuring the student engagement, enjoyment even in these lessons. So this is a huge benefit to having a student-centered approach. The next benefit is that the learning outcomes would be the learning outcomes would be achieved in a much greater way. So as a student is engaged, they are aware of what they really need and within what time frame as well that they need this. So at the end of the lessons, when you do check in, well, hey, did you achieve this? Were you able to get this? Did you improve this aspect of your speaking? You have a higher chance of getting a yes, or having these things been achieved when you take into consideration the student from the very beginning, because they would be working hard to ensure their own goals are being met, to not let down themselves, and they know or they understand along the way that it's really up to them. They get the clear picture that the teacher is simply a guide, a mentor, a coach, even along the way of their language learning journey. Next benefit is that I'm thinking about it really quickly, but this gives the students a sense of independence, right? So it kind of ties in a little to what I said at the end of the last benefit, right? So it gives them the sense of independence that this is their project. This is something that they want to do, and they can completely feel in control. They know they're going to have to do the homework. They're going to have to do some extra activities on their own. They're going to have to really follow up with the things that you've assigned them to do as well. So all of these things fall into a category of, oh, I'm responsible for the student, right? So they think to themselves, oh, I'm responsible for this. If I don't do this, then okay, obviously I don't achieve X, Y, Z. Yeah? The final benefit, this one is a benefit for the teachers. Having a student-centered approach, it makes it so that you can teach just about anyone with any need, because you would be going ahead from the very beginning, identifying what are their needs, what are the things that they want from you as a teacher, how they would like to have their lessons, what are their areas that they are not the best in, or that they want to improve. Is it speaking? Is it pronunciation? Is it vocabulary? Is it listening? Right? And that allows you to tailor exactly your lessons and throw a wider net. You can now teach a broader sense, a broader group of people once you're able to do this needs analysis at the beginning of your lessons, and in general have that student-centered approach. I like to think of it kind of like an agile strategy. So it's sort of continuous improvement, continuous development, continuous changes, but building upon what the student wants to achieve at the very end, right? There you go. Those are the main benefits of having this student-centered approach. Let's talk about how to implement this student-centered approach in your classroom. And I'll go through these really briefly because this isn't the big point of today's video. We're really focusing on just how we would answer that interview question. How to implement a student-centered approach. So one of the first things that you do, this is what I mentioned at the very beginning with the benefits as well. You're having a needs analysis at the beginning of your course or your lessons with the students. So the very first lesson, you have a needs analysis, and in your needs analysis you have a series of questions that you will ask your student, and this gives you a really broad picture as to what they want, what they're expecting, right? What are their goals, what are their objectives from the language training that they would take with you. Now you can go into as much detail as you would like, or keep it as general as you like. However, I would suggest having a good mix of questions in there where you get to know the student on an individual basis, and then you also get to understand their language learning needs and to find out how they learn in general. How do they learn, not just languages, but in general, what is their strategy or their methods of learning? These are the types of questions I will include. Maybe I can do another video on that, creating a needs analysis question form. Another way to implement a student-centered approach is to have a lot of student input in the classroom. So this means that you are speaking, to give a percentage, maybe 10% of the time, and the student is speaking 90% of the time. The bits where you're speaking are quick questions, follow-up notes, maybe even when you give corrections, definitely that's included, directions as well, that's also included in your speaking time. Everything else is for the student. So get really comfortable with asking open-ended questions, and get really comfortable with silence and letting there be silence. If you ask a question, don't be tempted to answer your own question. Give the student time to think. If it's still taking a bit longer, I would suggest asking a follow-up question, such as, did you understand that question? Or was that difficult for you to understand? Would you like me to say it again? Right? But don't fill and try to answer your actual question yourself. Leave that to the student, right? Another way to implement a student-centered approach is within the tools that you use. So now there's so many tools that we can use in an online classroom. For example, whiteboard, having a whiteboard on your screen that's really fun and interactive, using breakout rooms and all of these video conferencing platforms. They have breakout rooms. I would say those are the two main ones that I use as well. Use chat features like polls and questionnaires that you can have directly in certain platform chats as well. So there are many ways you can have these interactive tools or use these interactive tools in your classroom. Another way you can implement the student-centered approach is, of course, to be flexible and adaptable. I think this goes without saying, but I will say it anyway. So try to be flexible, mendable, moldable in some ways. I love to check in with my students at the very beginning or in that first lesson. I always ask them, were you able to understand me? Was I too fast? Was I too slow? How was it? And I really do take into consideration their feedback, and I try to adapt that for the next lesson that we have together. Another question that I always ask is, in regards to the lesson itself, was that lesson too challenging, or did it feel just right for you? Or would you like to try something more challenging next time? So you might think, oh, those are some basic questions. Yes, very basic, but it allows the student to have control, take ownership of what is happening and what they are experiencing. And they really do appreciate that. Another way that you can be adaptable is simply within the lesson itself. If a student pops a surprise question at you, surprise grammar question or surprise anything, always try to give an answer. And it's possible now, if you have tools like ChatGPT or just Google Open, you can Google the question as the student is saying it. Usually they would speak at a slower speed, so you can have enough time to type that question in and find an appropriate answer to give to the student. And then I always follow up with, let me give you some more detail and information on that at the end of our lesson, or I can send that detail, send that information for you at the end of our lesson. So this gives you some time to follow up with the brief explanation that you've given with something more detailed. So to circle all the way back, or to circle back to our question, how do you answer the question? Can you tell us about your teaching style, or how would you describe your pedagogic approach? In 2024, the best answer is to say, well, I have a student-centered approach, meaning that I allow my students the opportunity to discuss openly their needs, their desires, their goals and objectives, and I follow up with that. It depends on you, every lesson, every 3 lessons, every 5 lessons, and to make sure that we're still on the right track and that we're working towards the students' goals together. I really love adding interactive tools such as breakout rooms or interactive whiteboards to my lessons, and I really value personalized feedback for my students, and I try to always be flexible and adaptable in the lessons. So that was just a quick answer off the top of my head of something that I would say when I'm asked, tell me about your teaching style. So that's it for today's video. Let me know if this was helpful for you. And if you'd like to see any more videos like this talking about interview questions and how you can answer it as a teacher in 2024. See you next time.